Hello, to the moon. It's Tuesday the 24th of October, and what a spectacular breakout we have had in Bitcoin last night and this morning. So depending on where your time zone is, I am going to take a look at, we'll start with Bitcoin here on the weekly chart. Let's tidy up. So, big levels mean a lot in Bitcoin. They become kind of big pivot levels. And although for me, we had made a bottom when we got above 25,000 and this kind of inverted head and shoulders bottom here, and back above the weekly 200 moving average, which for me is the king of the chart, that was the bottom was in. But we came back and we tested it and it got very, this was quite a difficult kind of correction here and a flat correction, which made it look pretty double toppy. One of the things with these corrections is if it could possibly have ended up being a kind of 5-wave pattern here. And so, with everything that was going on, it could have ended up doing something like that before we went up again. But breaking out here with just a 3-wave flat correction for me is really exciting. And the power and the strength of the way we're doing it makes me think that we are in a wave 3 and we're trending higher. And that's pretty good. But as I said yesterday, as you know, I always measure the moves or measure the swings to get targets. And the first bearish target for Bitcoin was 34,300, which is kind of around these lows. So it is a bit of a support and resistance level. And if we put our big fib swings on from this high, we're getting pretty close to this 38.2 fib. Now, we were a little bit choppy and sideways at this 236 fib, although we did eventually respect it. So it makes me kind of a little bit wary of leaning on it as a hard level at the moment. So I'm going to leave that. But this potentially is a little bit of a pullback level. Now, let me be very clear, this is not a top. I think Bitcoin is starting a new uptrend here. This weekly chart makes this really clear. So pullback levels are to be bought. You buy the pullback. This is not where you pile in short, okay? Especially in Bitcoin. Now, so 34, yes, we could see a little bit of a pullback here. And as I said yesterday, if you were long and you don't get a Heikin-Ashi signal to sell, which we didn't get yesterday on the 4-hour, if you're swing trading like this, like I am, there is no reason to get out. But one of the best ways I like to see oversold is how far away are you from the moving averages? And we are very far away from these moving averages. And if we look at this bridge level, which we finally broken above, it was such a big pivot between 30,000 and 32,000. If let's go back to the weekly, was a really tough pivot level. It was support here in January 2020. It was support in June 2021. And it was when we got underneath it, this was a little fight. And here 18 months ago, the 3 Arrows Capital Terra Luna debacle that has led to this 18 months of chill in the market, I think is finally over. It's so funny, this was marked by an eclipse. The FTX collapse was an eclipse, and this weekend we have an eclipse to mark, I think, this horrible period over. Far too much leverage and some really bad actors. So I'm really excited to see this bear market over, I have to say. And I'm really excited to be buying pullbacks. So if we look at this as such an important pivot level, then we can say that if we're going to still be going up, we shouldn't really go back underneath 30,000 again. So any pullbacks towards 32,000, 31,000 are to be booked, I think. Now, on a 4-hour, that's the time frame that I'm watching with alarms. But if you bought this short term on the breakout last night, you might want to be watching for a bigger pullback here. As usual, as you know, I like to look for 3-wave pullbacks to the moving averages to buy. So here on the hourly, if we're going to get a retest of this level, it would look something like that. And that would be a buy signal. And if we're going to keep going, you know, sometimes when Bitcoin gets its mojo on, it does just keep going, and the trend isn't over until the bend at the end, you know. And then, so until we get that bigger reversal, we are going to look to buy pullbacks. For me and my rules, once I can see kind of 5 waves in a sequence, I kind of like to wait for a bigger pullback towards that 20 moving average before I put new positions on. So yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? So again, if we continue above 34,500, the next measured move target is at 40,400. Now, do I think this is where Bitcoin is going to stop? No, I actually think that we have more upside to come, and I think for this swing we should see at least 50,000, which is where this swing would be 1.618 of the first rally we made off the lows. However, if we go above 50,000, we're going to retest these highs at 65,000 again. Now, there are some niggles out there that going on. I think a lot of it missed about the lawsuit against I think Grayscale may not be the best trade or the best way to trade this. I have to say, be careful. I'm not quite sure that GBTC won't have to be sold, but they have a lot of Bitcoins, and so if you're starting an ETF, you're going to want to buy some Bitcoins. For all of the people anticipating this huge rally because BlackRock are going to have to go out and buy their Bitcoins in the open market, I honestly would be astonished if they had not done a deal with the government to buy Bitcoin over the counter with them. Imagine if you're an ETF manager and you are trying to get approval, and you do not want to see the market rocket in anticipation of that before you have to buy your Bitcoins, do you? So also, and if you bought all those Bitcoins in advance, then you don't get approved, then you have to sell them into a disappointed falling market. So I would not be surprised if I was looking for an ETF approval and I was BlackRock, I would be doing a deal with the government to buy their huge stash of Bitcoin. Okay, so I'm looking at 34,500 as potentially on the daily close or daily weekly close, potentially a level where we may see a little bit of pullback, back and fill, and an opportunity to buy some more. And if we continue above 34,539, I'm looking for 40,500 next on our way to 50,000. So yeah, I'm still in. Buy every buy, pullback entry you get. I will shout when I see the next one. I apologize, I wasn't watching it last night. I had a very sick dog that I unfortunately lost. So anyway, let's take a look at some of the others. So Bitcoin rallied 12%, ETH rallied 10%. That's pretty good, isn't it? Now if we take a look at ETH and the levels we were looking at in ETH, now I've said this before, but 50% retraces often retrace 50%. Mean reverting markets tend to keep mean reverting. So if you get a 50% retrace one way, you will get a 50% retrace the other way. So if we go from these lows here in ETH, we didn't quite go back to this 50%, but if we look at this most recent swing, it kind of was. And so 50% may be the first 50% back from these highs, may be the first level we could see some profit taking in ETH. And that 50% level is 1831. And on this breakout, that was our first target. So we did the 236 fib, the 38.2. We've blasted through, so we're going to look for that to be support. And so potentially here in ETH, we could see some profit taking. That should give us a really nice buy. And because we don't really want to do a 50% retrace all the other way in ETH, we're going to say, fibs are like a ladder. This 38.2 and this previous high here at 1758 needs to hold as support on a back test. If we close back underneath 1758 in ETH, we are going to see a 50% retrace the other way because this is a 50% level. Obviously, if we continue higher before we retrace that level, that pattern doesn't apply. But in this case, if we do not go any further, if we reverse here at 1831, we need to hold 1758. If we go up to the 61.8, then we're going to, at 1904, then we're going to look for 1831 to be support if we're going to keep going without a bigger pullback. If we go back underneath 1831, we're still looking for back to 1758. So staircase to staircase to staircase, and we've had a pretty good move today already after a really big move last night. And we can, if we go down to a lower time frame, in fact like an hourly, you can see this 1758 is the previous swing low, so that is the, we've got a little bit of a double top here, and so that is the level that we're looking, that we're likely to pull back to. And if we do get one, and that's the first place, if you're looking for a nice long entry, that's the level I would be looking for in ETH. Now yesterday we were looking at Link for a breakout and the targets, and we said having broken out from this wedge, the first upside target was this previous swing high, which we have smashed above. Now if you overshoot a level in the market, you usually get an inverted head and shoulders, so unless I see one of those, I'm not too worried about this. And I actually think that this previous swing higher at 9.6 is a pretty good place to look for a pullback to in Link. Also, this was the last big thrust candle, that's kind of 50% back of it. If we go below that, obviously we need to pull back to the moving averages and the daily 20 moving average, and we're in a bigger correction in Link. Now go back to the big level here. In Link, for me, in terms of fib pattern rules, this is, if I draw my fibs from this low to high, this is a lovely 886 reversal. Your first target is the 786, you back test it, it's the confirmation level. Above 11.44 and this 786 fib level, my first target is going to be back to the 38.2, which is all the way, sorry, the 50% here, 26.51. So if we're going to see a bigger pullback, the first place I think that's going to happen is 11.4. It's also, if we zoom out here, pretty important support and resistance swing low here. So we need a weekly close above 11.44, and then we have got a really meaty trade with a target from 11.44 to 26.5. You know, and these are great moves. You know, Bitcoin now is like over 100% off the lows this year. You can't do that in gold or pretty much any other market. It's quite exciting times. So after 18 months of a really, really rough time, I'm pretty excited to see all this happening, I have to say. Okay, so we're going to look for a shallow pullback. 9.6, I think we said, or these previous highs, halfway back of this candle. Yeah, 9.5, 9.4 actually. And you know, most moves are 5 waves. So here in Link, if we go from the low on the 11th of September, 1, 2, 3, we should see a wave 4 here. The most common retrace of a wave 4 is 38.2, and so that also 9.6 then for is the most ideal pullback level for one more swing higher in Link before we get a bigger correction. So let's take it. The dogs of, not everything is rallying. Even Doge had a really nice breakout rally here though. One of my favorite things about moving averages is they're really, especially the 50 moving average, the daily 50 is really powerful. That was exactly the high in Doge when we tried to rally on the 16th of October, mid-month, and when we got above it, it was support yesterday for a massive rally. Now, you know, previous swing highs, excuse me, I've had such a bad throat, sorry. Previous swing highs are always profit-taking levels because they know that's where the sellers are. And so here in Doge, we're likely to have a little bit of a pause at this previous swing high. And just like we said in Link, this big thrust candle, 50% back of this candle, somewhere around 0.064 likely to be support. We could also say if this is 1, 2, 3, and we're going to see a fifth wave, then yeah, 0.065 to 0.063, that's really the kind of zone I would be looking for a pullback to and a bullish reversal in Doge if we're going to see another leg higher. And we have to kind of watch the price action for a bottoming pattern there in Doge. So yeah, more upside. Where would the target be? Well, if we look at the weekly, I would say, to be honest, this weekly 50 moving average is likely to be resistance, but more likely, I'm going to measure from this low to high, project from here, and you can see that lines up with exactly the 61.8 of this first swing and the weekly 50 moving average. So that gives us a target on a pullback in Doge back to around 0.065, gives us a target of 0.0746 and a second target of 0.0864, which is where this will be an equal measured move. And if we're not going to break out from this kind of channel that we're in, that's kind of around where I'm looking. Also, bit of a pivot level around there, so that's where I'd be looking. 0.86 second target, then 0.0746, and then 0.0864 for Doge. Looking good. All of these markets buy pullbacks. Don't buy the breakout spike. If you can, buy the pullback. Even Matic that we looked at yesterday, and a huge breakout. Now, this is quite exciting as well because we are approaching 1.618 and potentially a nice bottom. If we look at these daily moving averages, quite a good look for a bottom. And this is what happens, you know, when you hold above and you've got a wave 3. So this kind of like starting to look like a 1, 2 and 3 of 3. So we expect a pullback wave 4. We don't really want to go underneath 0.6 and Matic. And then our first upside target, I'm going to zoom out, is going to be the 236 fib from the February high. And that comes in at 0.74. 0.74 is a really interesting level because of all of these swing lows around here. Look, if we look left, so keep buying pullbacks in Matic, target 0.74. Let's look at INJ, which was one of our favorites for a decent move. Lovely breakout in INJ. Now, if we go to the weekly, I put my fibs on from the high that we made in May 2021 to the low in July 2022. And we said, watch out, you know, this 38.2. Now, these fibs haven't been that well respected. I like it when the 236 is respected on the back test, but it is a bit washy, isn't it? So I'm going to do the same as we said in Bitcoin. Here's our first 5 wave swing off the lows. Here's our 3 wave pullback, and we'll measure for targets. So 1, 2, 3, like this. Now, I actually think we may be doing this. So I think 10.85 is what I really wouldn't want to see INJ back underneath. And that's usually kind of the ideal pullback level. So 10.85, let's go back and see, does that line up with the fib level that we had? Yeah, kind of, doesn't it? 10.62. So if we're looking for a level that we don't want to see INJ back underneath, if we're sticking with our longs, and I've got some, then I'm going to get out of my longs if it closes underneath 10.6. And otherwise, I'm looking for this to continue to 13.4 to 14.2. Also, you know, we can see all these spiky highs here. So, excuse me, another important pivot level for INJ. I think I have to cough. Sorry. Okay. Ideally, though, for me, I would like to see this swing be a big 1.618 of this first rally, and so 19 and 20 is my really ideal first next target for INJ. But buy pullbacks, we are pretty overbought. It might even be a shallow one, but that's this market that we're in. So for me, I really like, my favorite time frame to trade is the 4 hour. I like to see some red candles and then turn green again, go up again. I like to see the CCI reset and we're on our way higher again. So if you haven't got any of these, it's much better for your mental capital to buy a pullback and when it turns up again, because then you have the trade with momentum going your way rather than riding out the pullbacks, which are not so cool psychologically. Fetch we looked at yesterday to see if we could break out from this sideways range. Here it is on the weekly. Let's put regular candles on. Now, I think we've done a pretty good job in Fetch. The problem is these swing highs. We may see a little bit of a pullback here, but because I've got my fips from the low that we made in November to the high that we made in February. We've bounced from a 786 fib. So to confirm the bullish reversal, we need to close above this 61.8. This is a weekly, remember, so we need a weekly close above 0.264. And if we get it, our first target is this 38.2, because reversals at 786 that go above the 61.8 go to a minimum, this 38.2 usually. Also, but because we've got this is a third swing, this is 1, 2, 3, or it could be A, B, C. I'm going to measure this first swing off the lows, which was so spectacular, and project. So if we do that here and Fetch, our first target up here is at 0.5, and the 236 fib is at 0.477. So that really, if we can hold above 0.2649, is the target on our trade here. Here's the meat in our sandwich, that's our target zone. And so now we're going to look for 0.264 to hold. If we hold, and if we see a bigger pullback here, then this is just the top of the sideways range. So that makes this quite a shallow pullback here for Fetch. But when a bull market begins and people are chasing, you know, hopefully that's what we want to see. And if we come back underneath this, you know, 61.8 fibs can be very messy. So it may be that we come back to this previous swing low and then we get back above and we hold it. And then remember, because this is a daily and a weekly close that we're going to look for. So, but yeah, so we can do that. Remember, look, we're at previous swing highs and important trend level here at 0.29. So by pullbacks and Fetch, we have a really nice trade if we can get a daily and weekly close above 0.2649 in Fetch. That's one of my favorites. And let's take a look at Rune on the weekly. So let's tidy up chart here. Bounce from our bullish support. Now, we had a pretty tough pivot level that we needed to close above in Rune at the round number 2. Let's put regular candles on. We kind of washed through it a few times. That doesn't mean it won't be support when we come back and try it again. And that's from this swing high. This was our confirmation level where we failed, got above, washed through. And so I'm going to be looking for 1.96 to hold as support. Also, if you trade candlesticks on the daily, this would be a 50% retrace of our big thrust candle that got us above this level again. So again, don't buy breakouts, buy pullbacks, But that for me would be the ideal level. It's also my 4-hour 20 moving average, and it may be sometimes we don't come back that far. I'm going to say, listen, I'm bearish if we close back underneath this, because this will just be a nasty sideways range. But a nice 3-wave pullback that holds above 1.96 or potentially comes back and tags it. And a 4-hour buy for me would be a nice long entry for the rune. Let's talk about where our targets are in rune. Now, we could be really optimistic and go, oh, we're looking for the 236, which is all the way up there at 5.6, which would be obviously doubling our money. I think before there, we have got this really important resistance level, haven't we? A bit like the bridge level that we talked about in Bitcoin. This is a level that we really need to get above if we're going to reverse the trend in rune. And it comes from these lows. The first low in February 2021, July 2021, and this swing low here in February 2022. So it's around 3, just over 3. So first upside target is going to be 3 for rune, and then holding above we may end up, you know, making one of those big kind of head and shoulders pattern there, because we'll have 5 waves up then. So back to the wave 4 then would give us a really nice bullish pattern in rune. So for me, my first target and major resistance level for rune is 3. Then I think we could see quite a big pullback, and then I'm super bullish for another swing higher. Okay, hope that's useful. I will be back with stock indexes and commodities.